Welcome. This is Quick Take, where we talk about the questions that are on the minds of professionals everywhere with James Capps. James Capps, welcome. How are you today?
I'm fantastic. How are you?
I did pretty well, I have to say.
You did great. You did great. I'm impressed. You have one star on your little poster.
We have done this so many times, you'd think I would have been a professional a long time ago, but we'll just stay with that.
Yes, go with it.
So we're going to talk about, I don't know where we're going to take it, but we're going to talk about quiet quitting because that's something
Yes.
that's really being talked about right now. So let's first define it. Like, what do you think of, or how do you define it?
Well, I will tell you how I think it's defined in pop culture right now, and then
Okay.
I'll tell you what I really think it is. I mean, pop culture, and whether it's a TikTok trend or it's the whatever Twitter thing you're reading, it's basically when employees are no longer going above and beyond. They are closing their laptop at 5 o'clock. They're not doing work after hours. They are doing the bare minimum that is required of their job, and that has been given a name, and it's really uh, from an employer's perspective where people have really just started doing only the bare minimum.
Yeah. And it means that they don't say anything and all of a sudden they're gone and there's no way to get them back.
Um, I think that yes, I think that it's done in a vacuum. It's done in a way that is it's a malicious, if you will, and in a way to basically respond to the way that I think maybe the employees are feeling that they've been treated.
Yeah. What can we do? Like, as an executive, what are you doing about this?
You know, for me, it's we've given a name to and given the name gives power to the people who are responding to the bigger issue, right? So it's it, I think the issue is really that the contract between the employer and the employee has been violated. And what does that
Mm,
mean? That the employee no longer believes that they are adequately being compensated for the above and beyond. And that all of the things that an employee gets out of that relationship are no longer equating to what has historically been going above and beyond. And so I think while the employee in this case we're giving the name to it. Well, for years we've been talking about bosses and companies that expect too much or have over ridiculous demands or all these other things, where it's really the same reflection of the same issue. So it is a much more complicated thing to say that it is an employee response or an employee action, that it's an employee response to what I think the firms or the companies have really just taken for granted for too long.
yeah.
So
So, yeah, what is there to do?
that's really the question, right? I think,
Yeah.
look, I think it's tough to say. Ultimately, I think good management practices will always win, right?
Yeah.
You won't have this problem when you're honest and transparent with your employees and you have good communication with your employees. If your employees are reacting silently to something that you as an employer or a company are doing, then you already have a problem. This is just this is
Yeah.
just another outcome. It could be as simple as, this is no different than stealing supplies, taking naps during lunch, or quiet quitting. It's all really the same thing, in the sense that you as a manager and your leadership team have failed to maintain that
Yeah.
contract with your employees. So it's just like many things today. Somebody grabs a hold of it, sticks a name on it, it gets picked up by a
Yeah.
couple
It's
news
fair.
organizations, and now we call it a thing. Which should be really just called, look, bad management is a problem in this world. We should
Yeah.
continue to work on it.
Yeah. And so I guess getting feedback or knowing where you stand with your employees and having those regular meetings so that you
Yep,
know
yep,
kind of the pulse
yeah.
is
I
the
got, I
best
got,
way.
I got three things you can do.
Okay.
Because that's kind of how you like to roll
That's how
here on
you
the
roll.
quick take.
Go.
That's how we roll on the quick take.
One.
It's
Number
really,
1.
the first thing. Number one ting. We don't have any graphics for that. Who's the
Ding.
graphics coordinator for this? Thank you. Um, the first thing we need to do is we need to recognize the fact that we have a role to play in this, and that our on the global
Yeah.
situation today, whether it's the anxiety and the stress that's related to inflation,
Yeah.
COVID, global politics, environmental issues, whatever, that there is a level of stress that is truly measurable and exists in our workspace, and we have to be empathetic. So I think the first thing is to know that this is a real situation and that we have a role to play. So I think that self-awareness as a leadership team is super important.
Yeah,
Um,
and I wanna just say self-awareness to you as a leader, but you're right, it has to be a discussion with the
yeah,
leadership team as well. Self-awareness
Yeah,
for
I think
both.
that's yeah, I think the whole firm needs to really get engaged in that. And it's harder with a big firm, and maybe your company doesn't really buy into that, or you're in an industry that may not be as have the opportunity to spend that kind of energy around your people. But look, I always say all politics are local. I work for a very large company, and we have offices in 47 countries. But what I can control is what I can goes on in Denver, and I can
Yeah.
control that, and I make sure that the people that work in this building have a certain level of awareness to that. I can work with my management teams on other places, but I know what I can control, and I think that's super important that we focus on that.
Awesome. Responsibility, number 1. What's number 2?
Right. And the second thing I think is having the dialogue with your employees. Talk
Mhm.
about not about the quiet quitting or the quiet resignation, but really talk about where they are.
Yeah.
Where are they from a just in general? I think that your direct reports, if you're not asking them on a weekly basis, how are you doing? This is the kind of thing that will happen to your company. You will have people who have basically quit on you without exiting the door. Um, there are a lot of dynamics in play. Um, and I think that, look, at the end of the day, these are people, and these are the people that we work with, and each one of them has their own lives. And if we as managers don't take into consideration the fact that these folks have lives and that needs to be taken into consideration, I think we're missing out on a big part of our role as leaders.
Yeah, and I just wanna reiterate, "How are you?" And then even
Yep.
saying, "How are you?" again, because sometimes we
Mhm.
answer the question because we think it's
Fine.
yeah,
Right.
exactly.
It's how are you? I'm fine. How are you?
Yes.
And then you'll like, oh, I really am interested. This wasn't just a
Yeah,
pleasant a tete-a-tete for giggles. So I think that
exactly.
that's super important.
Awesome,
And then I
awesome.
think I think I think the third thing really is that we have to have some consistency here. This type of transparency and trust does not happen once a year at the Christmas party. You can't
Yeah,
stand up at a town hall and say, "I love you guys," and employees are our greatest asset, and then move on. This has got to be a large scale effort. And look, we're in a very interesting period right now especially with larger companies. Well, any company really, the return to work continues to be a very dynamic situation. We have companies like JP Morgan, Jamie Dimon saying we're going to be sort of flexible. We have people like Google who are saying, no, we're back. And then you have people
yep,
like Twitter who are saying, we don't care. And so each employee is now going through their own gut check on what's important to them.
yeah,
And I think that we no longer are in a world in which the um, think about a time when all cars were the same. Henry Ford said any color you like as long as it's black. And we worked in a world where your job experience as an employee was always the same, largely across the ecosystems. You'd hear anecdotal stories about how cool it was for Google or how it was over here, but generally you worked to 9 to 5, you had a lunch, maybe you worked after hours, you did your thing. It's kind of the same. Now, there's so many more levers, there's so many more variables, there's so many new things that every employee has an opportunity to look at things differently. And I think that's huge. And so if you are going to create a situation where your employees are going to want to stay with you and not not quietly resign, that you have to have a long-term strategy to ensure that you're engaging with them.
I love it. Those are all really good. So tie it back up for us. What are the 3?
So the first one is really know that you play a key role in this, that,
Yep,
that you as a leadership are super important. Two is, ask your people, how are they? Create that dialogue, create that transparency. And 3, know that this is a long-term effort. You can't solve this problem with just one question, one meeting. You've got to engage and have a real strategy around how to do this long-term.
Love it, James. Those are so actionable and so helpful. Thank you for that. Until next time, thanks for being here. This has been Quick Take, where we are talking about the things that are on the minds of executives everywhere. So thanks, James Caps. We'll see you next time.